Mark Cuban is the mystery guest. Wow, really excited to talk with you. So Moose and I were just discussing the latest from Daily News, and Shams had it as well. Sam Amick that Disney in Orlando has now kind of emerged as the leader here in terms of being the stage and the host for the NBA. If you guys get back up and running, does that square with what you're hearing?
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, I don't know that there's a favorite necessarily, but I'm all for the Hotel California approach, right? Once you enter, you can't leave until you're eliminated from either your season ends or you're eliminated from the playoffs. I think, once we get to that point where the science says we can keep everybody safe, I think I'm all in, and I know other owners are as well. So, I can't give you definites, but I'm really hopeful that we'll get back playing again.
Mark, how long is the NBA willing to wait in order to make that decision?
Well, look, let's work backwards, right? So I think the way things are going right now, next season would start probably Christmas Day. So that's December 25th. You figure we need, let's just, to make it easy, a month for training camp and preseason. So that's November 25th. And if you need, let's just say 2 months off at the most because it's just so funky. So October, September 25th. So if we can end by September 25th, then when do we need to start by? And so if you figure that we need 2 weeks, 3 weeks to get everybody ready, hopefully 3 or 4 regular season games to get everybody ready for playoffs, then you can go from there. So we probably have until August.
Okay, so August. And it just seems like there's such a different tenor and rhetoric coming from the NBA than, say, Major League Baseball. I know at one point you were trying to buy the Chicago Cubs, right? I mean, you wanted to get into MLB ownership. Is that a fair assessment, or are things maybe a little bit more contentious behind the scenes, or no?
No, I don't think it's so much contentious. I mean, I don't know any specifics to Major League Baseball, but 15 guys on a roster is a whole lot easier than 25. And even though ours is more physical than baseball, I think it's just different in terms of the number of just the way things work. With us, you roll the ball out and you're pretty much ready to go. And baseball is just different.
Mark, when you mentioned regular season games, right now you envision there'd be at least 3 or 4 regular season games before the playoffs began?
That's just me personally talking. I haven't been part of the discussions, and I think every owner I've talked to has got a little bit different opinion. If you're eliminated already, if this would have been us last year, it would have been tough to get the guys excited to play, but it's like watching The Last Dance, right? Michael Jordan comes back and had 20 games and ran out of gas in the first playoff round, right? And that's Michael Jordan during his prime. It's just going to be difficult, I think, just to have guys turn it on for the playoffs without having had some games under their belt.
Mark Cuban is our mystery guest, and I appreciate his time. From the players that you've been in touch with, and I know at least on the outside, it seems like you're very close with your players. Do they have concerns about health and safety?
I mean, they're concerned because we really don't have any good sources of information we all trust, right? So everybody's trying to figure out, who's right and who's wrong. And it's gotten so political that everybody's just more confused than concerned. But I think, I've tried to be brutally honest with our guys and just tell them, look, I think the science is there, but we've got to make sure that we're not taking things away from everyday people, non-athletes who need tests or need whatever is necessary, right? That's, I think a lot of owners' biggest concerns, that if not everybody can get a test, we don't want to be in a position where we're taking tests away from those people for NBA players and essential personnel. Once tests are readily available, I think the quality of the tests are good enough that if we're in a quarantine environment, we can make it all work. But we just got to get to the point where tests are readily available for everybody.
Mark, when did, your opinion, because I remember seeing an interview with you, maybe it was like 4 or 5 weeks ago, where you were questioning the idea of the NBA returning this year. Is it a case of where, we flattened the curve, new information, the mindset and the change from your perspective about the NBA's return?
Yeah, just new science. When we were the last game, March 11th, when everything shut down, and when I did an interview then, obviously basketball was not the biggest issue. We were just trying to keep, figure things out. But now, I'm a big believer in American exceptionalism, and our scientists and our doctors, are kicking ass, and you're reading about vaccines and tests improving every day. And so, just over the past, what has that been? March, April, more than 2 months now, 9 weeks.
Yeah.
A lot has changed, and it's just new data.
Mark Cuban is our guest. Mark, we talk a lot about like the players versus the owners. Like I said, a little bit more in Major League Baseball because it's contentious between those two sides. But there's this sort of idea, that Moose and I talk about, which is that the owners can withstand taking a financial hit more than the players, because you guys as owners, you own your team for a long period of time. You would be able to recoup the losses, whereas a player has a more finite career. They have a really short amount of time to make their money. Is there something we're missing there from the owner's point of view? What would you say to that? Is there a reason why we should be a little bit more sympathetic to the owners?
Well, no one's going to ask for sympathy for an owner, obviously. But there's a couple things that I'd tell you, and this isn't specific to NBA. This is the ownership of every professional sports team. One, what's changed a lot over the past 10, even 15 years is that owners, I was one of the last people just to write a check, just one guy write a check for a team. Tillman Fertitta has done it for the Rockets, and there's been some others. But most teams are now owned by consortiums, groups of people who put together capital where, not one person just dominates the amount. A lot of people put in a lot of money. And so you've got groups of owners that own a team that, not all in the same financial circumstances. So that's one issue. So you might have pressure from 2, 5, 10 out of 20 owners in a group that are in bad financial situation because of the virus and how it's impacted their business. Then you have other circumstances, and I've got a friend who owns the team, not in the NBA, but in another league, and he's had to lay off, 50,000 total people, I think the number was, and his businesses are still shut, and he's bleeding, more capital than he probably had. And so you have owners that have just been destroyed. And, it's not about, they can just borrow more money. You can't borrow money against a business that has no revenue, and you don't know if or when it'll open. And if it does open, whether or not the revenue will still be there and they can make money. And so you literally could have owners, again, across all sports, no one in particular, that just aren't able to come back from this and have to sell their teams. So, again, I'm not asking for sympathy for any owner. I'd rather be, even in the worst position of the worst owner in professional sports than what some people are having to face across the country and around the world. But at the same time, it's not shocking when you hear some owners say that they're going to lose hundreds of millions of dollars. Like I was just reading something today that from Major League Baseball where they said, because they're so gate dependent that they're going to lose teams, individual teams. All individual teams are going to lose at least $100 million, if not more. And if you are an owner that can't afford that, particularly if you've been borrowing money, then it's going to be tough to come back from if things don't go back to normal.
But Mark, it's interesting because there's just this distrust with the players in Major League Baseball for the owners in Major League Baseball, and there just seems to be a better relationship between the players in the NBA and the front office and the owners in the NBA. It seems like everyone's kind of on the same page. It's kind of very divisive when you look at the sport of baseball.
Well, they weren't smart enough to let me in.
Seriously. How close were you
and they
to
should
the
have.
Cubs? I know.
I wasn't that close because I was told multiple times, the Cubs and the Rangers, there's no way you're getting approved.
Did they tell you
why? Why is that, Mark?
What I was told was that you're too much. They thought you'd be too much like George Steinbrenner, and I was like, look, the beauty of baseball versus basketball. In basketball, you pretty much know who the stars are and where you have to put your money. You're not always going to be right, but the superstars, in baseball, you really don't know. You develop players, and they come out of nowhere, and because there's so much variety and skill sets, it's really different. And while spending money can certainly help, look at the Yankees over all these years, but it's not necessarily the only way to build a great team. Look at the Cubs.
Yeah.
But if teams don't spend money like my Pirates, that creates a whole different set of circumstances. But yeah, so baseball was different, but they just thought I'd just blow out because there's no salary cap, that I would just blow everybody away and create a problem.
Hey, Mark, you decided to, take the risk and the gamble to pay a certain player, and that's Kristaps Porzingis after you guys made the trade. Why did you feel
Uh-huh.
comfortable giving him that contract?
Because he's an otherworldly talent. He works hard. He's committed to the team. I mean, he just, I think it's like a lot of jobs for anybody, not just in sports. You go into that first job after, you get out of school or go into your first job wherever your circumstances are, and you adapt in one way and you see things, and then when you get to a different set of circumstances, you just have a different perspective. And I think KP just needed a change of scenery, and he's been phenomenal. I mean, just incredible to have on the team. He's fun. He's funny. He's just a good guy.
Mark, when that trade was put in front of you, that you were going to have to give up what you were going to give up to get Porzingis, how stunned were you?
Very. But it happens in the NBA, right? It's like the James Harden trade. Like, James Harden gets traded from OKC to the Rockets, and I'm like, damn, why didn't we even get that offer to us? Because we weren't in the mix. Nobody was, and it was just like one phone call, and, the Rockets said yes. And this was our phone call, because what happens in the NBA, it happens all the time. General managers talk, and they'll say, well, go down the roster, who do you like, and pick any superstar on any team. Yeah, if you ever decide to trade him, no, we're not trading him. If you ever decide to trade him, no, we're not trading him. And then one day they change their mind for whatever reason, and that's what happened.
So you guys, it was just a ring back phone call. Porzingis was, that was it. It was no in-depth, long discussions about KP.
I mean, we'd already had those conversations before. Remember,
Gotcha.
The GMs talk all the time. It was always, okay, we're willing to do this, this, and this. If you ever want to give him up, no, we're not going to give him up. Just like we used to get calls about Dirk all the time. Hey, if you guys will trade Dirk, we'll give you A, B, and C, and D, E, and F. Well, like, no, we're not trading Dirk ever. Well, if you ever do, and in this particular case, they changed their mind.
Did you think that Porzingis was like a disgruntled superstar, or that the Knicks wanted to part ways?
I have no idea. I didn't ask. Every team has their own reasons. We let Steve Nash walk, and it was the dumbest thing I've ever done. And at that point in time, I was getting medical advice saying his back may not make it. Obviously, that advice was wrong. And so we made the decision based off the information we had. And the Knicks, had their judgment and were trying to do what they wanted to do. And, sometimes it works out and sometimes it doesn't.
Well, Mark, and down in Dallas, and this, the 1-2 combination of KP and Luka, it is going to be something to watch for years to come.
Yeah, no, it's exciting. Hey, and don't sleep on Timmy Hardaway Jr. Timmy's, I think, has been the biggest surprise. We knew KP was good. We knew what the other guys can do, but Timmy, now that he's just catch and shoot, has been lights out. Quickest release in the NBA, probably one of the top 3 catch and shoot players in all of the NBA now. And it took a little while for, the previous season, when we first, right after the trade, he wasn't quite confident of his role, and because we were asking him to do different things than the Knicks did. But with Luka getting him the ball, it's just a sight to see. So, as much as we love KP and Courtney, et cetera, getting KP getting Timmy has really been a great step for us.
Well, New York had 2 bites at the apple with Tim Hardaway Jr. Drafted him, then re-signed him. And so, yeah, he has a little history here. Mark Cuban is our mystery guest. This one's going to seem like it's way out of left field, Mark, so I apologize for that. But we're watching The Last Dance. And you bought the Mavericks, I believe. I'm doing this off the top of my head, in 2000?
Yeah, January of 2000.
When Jordan made his comeback with the Wizards, I know he had some ownership stuff with the Wizards, but did you ever kick the tires on whether MJ would come play for the Mavs?
Yeah, absolutely. So here's the story. David Falk calls me up and says, I want to meet you. Just bought a team, and, I represent all these great players, and so we should talk. And I'm like, great. And, oh, by the way, this is the day Michael Jordan is going to be in town. Why don't you come and we'll all meet? I'm like, awesome. Yeah, absolutely. I'd never met MJ at that point. So I'm like, of course I will. I drop everything and I go, and there's MJ in David Falk's office with all this paperwork in front of him. And I'd read all the rumors and everything. I'm like, don't sign it. Don't sign it. Come to the Mavs and we'll be aggressive. I'll do whatever it takes to win. And he's like, dude, A, I don't really know you, but B, I gave my word. And so, to his credit, he stuck by his word, and that's when he signed with the Wizards.
And that was the first time you met Michael Jordan. You're meeting with David Falk. MJ's there. He's about to sign papers to become a Wizard, and that's the first time you met MJ. I mean, what did you think of the documentary as we all took it in the last 5 weeks, Mark?
I loved it, man. I loved it. I mean, now I know Michael pretty well. I mean, because he's been an owner for so long, and so, he's a good guy, but you never really get to see. I never got to see that side of him while he was playing. And so just to see the differences of how the game was played then and the way it was all handled and, to see his intensity, I loved it. And it was also fun to see the softer side of him, right, dealing with kids, employees around the United Center, all that kind of stuff. It was a great documentary. I loved it.
That's funny because it's like you're giving Jordan like the Shark Tank pitch where you're on the other side, like pitching him, hey, come play for me.
Exactly.
I promise. Here's my bottom line. Like, here's what we can do.
I got this.
It's funny because I'm curious, Mark, from your point of view when you're watching that, Jerry Reinsdorf and how he comes off, which is, he along with Krause, I think, kind of come off looking kind of bad, quite frankly, because, they had the dynasty, they had a winner. I think it doesn't help them that the Bulls really haven't been a consistent winner since then and Derrick Rose's injuries and such. But, when you're watching that, do you empathize with Reinsdorf or do you still think that, there's a way that they could have gone for a seventh?
No, I empathize with him because it's really hard because, it's easy to say everybody would have signed a one-year deal to come back. It's harder to do. And when everybody's getting older and everybody's going to sign a multi-year deal, now all of a sudden you're looking at however many years, because contracts were a lot longer then. I think you could sign a 6-year deal. And, on one hand, you could say, hey, it's MJ. I'm going to do whatever I can to keep him happy. But on the flip side, you're looking and say, well, I just won 6 championships. Maybe I can get 7, but then I'm saddled with these guys who are much older. And if MJ is only going to sign a one-year deal and all these other guys want multi-year deals, then, okay, he could walk and I could get stuck with the worst team in history. And so I can see how he's doing it. I don't know what I would do. I really don't know. I mean, it really depends. Obviously I'd do anything that it took to keep MJ and to try to keep him happy, but you just don't know.
One guy I thought, watching Scotty, Mark, and you're a huge fan of the game. I don't think the documentary treated Scotty all that well. The migraine game, finally get a little bit of resolve with the bad back game against the Utah Jazz. Certainly not coming off the bench when the play wasn't called for him. I mean, Scottie Pippen, if he wasn't on that Bulls team, he was a massive superstar. He was as good as it gets being that point forward at that time in the NBA.
Yeah, no question. I mean, they didn't do Scotty any favors. I mean, you got to see his personality some, and you got to see more of who he was as a person and how he grew up, which was great. I mean, that was really enlightening. But you're right. I mean, anytime you have a guy and you put him in a documentary that he didn't play or looked like he could have played and didn't play or, didn't get surgery in time, they didn't do him any favors at all. But, that's the nature of the creative process, right?
Mark, just got a couple more minutes with you, and we can't tell you how much we appreciate your time here. People have asked you this a lot, so we'll, wondering, it's like a GM calling just to make sure, asking if you're available. Have you thought any more about running for political office?
I thought about it, but it's not going to happen. I mean, look, on one hand, I'm always going to say I'll keep my options open, but it's too late to do it now, just the way the whole thing works. But again, crazier things have happened. Like, look at the circumstances we're in. So I'll never say never, but it's highly unlikely.
Mark, what would a return, what would a return for the NBA during this time, being part of, kind of maybe the healing process, the bringing back, the reopening? What would it mean for the association?
Oh, it'd be great. I mean, put aside just basketball and basketball fans. I mean, the country needs something to rally behind. I mean, it was great to see NASCAR come back. It was great to see some UFC, but I mean, those are individual sports. We need some teams to root for. We need, things to Zoom with our buddies about other than the same stuff over and over again, just to get excited and to rally together as a community. We just need team sports right now. And so like I was saying earlier, if we can do it safely, we will be back. Yeah. It's just about doing it safely. And I'm I'm going from hopeful to more confident every day.
Mark, to your championship, one question there. Did the disappointment in the loss in what was a poorly officiated series, but the disappointment in the loss to Shaq and Wade and the Heat, did it make up for it with how sweet that victory was over LeBron in Miami for your Mavs?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. It was devastating in 2006, and I'll never change my opinion of how it happened and why it happened. But at the same time, finally getting that, not just for me, but for Dirk and Jay Kidd and Jason Terry and Tyson Chandler, DeShaun Stevenson, Sean Marion, just great guys and great locker room. Just so many people contributed. And if we were on Zoom, I'd turn around and show you that trophy that sits right by my desk every single day. I get to see it.
How many days did you sleep with that trophy, Mark? I know the first night you did. Was it in your bed for a week, 2 weeks, 2 months?
No, what's it been, 9 years?
Well,
good line.
And you know what, Mark? You're set up pretty well now. The trade on draft night for Luka, and then the trade for Porzingis. You guys have a fun team. You obviously have a great coach in Rick Carlisle, who you guys have had for many years now. You got a good GM, and so
what's going to be interesting for this season when we come back, or hopefully come back. Younger teams are going to benefit because we saw that with the lockout season when Oklahoma City Thunder. So the older teams. It's going to be more difficult just to turn it back on and get ready. So it's going to be really interesting to see what happens in the playoffs. Really interesting.
You want to throw
Mark,
a prediction out there, Mark? It sounds like you want to do a Joe Namath.
No predictions, but don't sleep on the Dallas Mavericks.
Okay, there we go.
Hey, Mark, we appreciate the time.
Anytime, guys. I really appreciate it. It was fun. And hey, if you're bored, go check out that Shark Tank and Entourage and Sharknado 3 and more to come.
Yeah, Mark, are you binging anything right now? Give us one thing you're binging.
Oh, what am I binging right now? I just finished Tiger King and Ozarks, and what's the one my wife wants to watch? Oh no, she's watching Blacklist. I haven't been able to get into Blacklist.
Okay.
So I haven't. Is there one I should watch?
Oh well, Tiger King.
Tiger King, Ozark. I mean, have you done the classics like Mad Men, The Wire, Sopranos?
Yeah. I've watched The Wire like 6 times already, all 90 episodes or whatever. But I'll find one.
Mark.
Well, Mark, listen,
Thank you.
Enjoy it. What did you think of Tiger King? Did you like it?
I loved it, man. It was crazy. When I thought my life was crazy, all I have to do is look at Exotic Joe and know I am so sane and normal that there's nothing anybody could say about me.
I bet he'd love to hear that, and I bet this will get back to him while he's in prison. So he really made his day.
Man, that's crazy.
That is great.
My God.
Funny stuff.
Well, Mark, we appreciate it. Yeah, you and your family,
guys.
everyone stay safe, all right?
You guys stay safe as well. Take care.
Okay, thank you.
You got it. Mark Cuban,
Mark Cuban.
the Dallas Mavericks owner. Fantastic. What a book.